Brother sacrifices his life to save sister from snake attack. In the heart of a dense forest, nestled between towering trees and winding rivers, lay a remote village. For years, the villagers had lived under the looming shadow of a massive, deadly serpent, a creature they believed to be a vengeful spirit. No one dared to challenge the beast, for those who tried never returned. Fear had become a constant companion, a suffocating presence that clung to every corner of the village. Amidst the fear and sorrow, two young orphans, Ariv and his younger sister Mira, struggled to survive. Despite their tender age, Ariv possessed a fierce protectiveness over Mira, a strength that belied his small frame. He was her guardian, her rock in a world that seemed intent on breaking them. One fateful evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows lengthened, the serpent struck. It emerged from the depths of the forest, its scales glinting in the fading light, its eyes gleaming with malice. The villagers scattered, their screams echoing through the air as they sought shelter from the beast's wrath. Mira, caught in the chaos, found herself in the serpent's path. Time seemed to slow as the creature coiled around her, its massive body enveloping her like a deadly embrace. Ariv, his heart pounding in his chest, watched in horror as his sister's life hung in the balance. In that moment, something within Ariv ignited. A spark of courage, a flicker of defiance against the overwhelming fear that gripped the village. Without hesitation, he threw himself at the serpent, his small hands grasping at its scales, his voice rising above the terrified cries of the villagers. The serpent, momentarily startled by Ariv's brazen attack, loosened its grip on Mira. She tumbled to the ground, gasping for air, her eyes wide with fear and disbelief. Ariv, now face to face with the beast, stood his ground, his eyes blazing with determination. The villagers watched, transfixed by the sight of the young boy standing up to the serpent. In that instant, something shifted in the air. A glimmer of hope, a whisper of possibility. Ariv's bravery, his willingness to sacrifice himself for his sister, had ignited a spark in the hearts of the villagers. As the serpent reared back, preparing to strike, Ariv closed his eyes, bracing himself for the inevitable. But the blow never came. Instead, a chorus of voices rose up, a cacophony of anger and defiance. The villagers, emboldened by Ariv's courage, had found their own strength, their own will to fight. In the days that followed, a change swept through the village. Ariv's near-fatal encounter with the serpent had awakened something in the people, a realization that they could no longer live in fear. Whispers of resistance, of unity, began to spread like wildfire. Three unlikely allies emerged from the shadows, drawn to Ariv's bravery and the village's newfound resolve. The first was Rishi, a wise elder who had seen the village through its darkest times. His eyes, though weathered by age, sparkled with a renewed sense of purpose. The second was Amara, a healer whose gentle touch and soothing words had mended countless wounds, both physical and emotional. She saw in Ariv a kindred spirit, a beacon of hope in a world that had grown weary. The third was Kiran, a reclusive warrior who had long ago turned his back on the village, haunted by his own demons. But Ariv's courage had stirred something within him, a reminder of the man he once was, the man he could be again. Together, this unlikely quartet began to plan, to strategize, to dream of a future free from the serpent's tyranny. They met in secret, huddled around flickering candles, their voices low but their spirits high. And as they planned, the village began to transform, slowly but surely, from a place of fear to a place of hope. As the days turned into weeks, the village buzzed with a newfound energy. People who had once kept to themselves now greeted each other with smiles and kind words. Children who had been too afraid to venture outside now played in the streets, their laughter a balm to the village's weary soul. Ariv and Mira found themselves at the center of this transformation, their bravery a shining example for all to follow. They worked tirelessly alongside Rishi, Amara, and Kiran, gathering resources, training the villagers in the art of defense, and fortifying the village against the serpent's inevitable return. But even as the village grew stronger, A sense of unease lingered in the air. The serpent, though unseen, was never far from their thoughts. Its presence, like a dark cloud on the horizon, loomed over them, a constant reminder of the battle yet to come. And come it did, on a night when the moon hung low in the sky, its pale light casting eerie shadows across the village. The serpent, as if sensing the village's newfound strength, emerged from the forest, its eyes glinting with a newfound malice. Ariv, Mira, and their allies stood at the ready, their weapons poised, their hearts beating as one. They knew that this was the moment they had been preparing for, the moment that would define their village, their lives, their future. As the serpent reared back, its massive body coiling like a spring, Ariv stepped forward, his eyes locked on the beast. And in that moment, he knew that whatever happened next, he had already won. For he had shown his village and himself that courage was not the absence of fear, but the strength to face it head-on. The battle raged on, the serpent's massive form thrashing and writhing as Ariv, Mira, and their allies fought with everything they had. The villagers, armed with newly forged weapons and a resolve as strong as steel, joined the fray, their cries of defiance mingling with the serpent's enraged hisses. Amidst the chaos, Ariv found himself face to face with the beast once more. Its eyes, burning with a primal fury, bore into his own, as if challenging him to make a move. And move he did, with a speed and grace that belied his years. He darted forward, his blade flashing in the moonlight. But the serpent was quick, its reflexes honed by a lifetime of hunting and killing. It dodged Ariv's strike, its tail lashing out and catching the young boy across the chest, sending him flying backwards. Mira, her heart in her throat, watched as her brother struggled to his feet, his face contorted in pain. She moved to his side, her own weapon at the ready, determined to protect him as he had always protected her. Together, they fought, their movements synchronized as if they were one. They danced around the serpent, striking at its weak points, their blades finding purchase in its tough hide. And with each strike, the serpent weakened, its movements becoming sluggish, its hisses turning to whimpers. As the battle wore on, the villagers began to tire, their strength waning in the face of the serpent's relentless onslaught. But Ariv and Mira, fueled by a love and bond that ran deeper than any fear, pushed forward, their determination unwavering. Rishi, Amara, and Kiran fought alongside them, their skills honed by years of experience and a lifetime of hardship. They worked as a unit, each one covering the other's weaknesses, each one lending their strength to the cause. But the serpent was not to be underestimated. With a sudden burst of speed, it lunged forward, its jaws snapping at Ariv's arm. The boy cried out in pain, his weapon clattering to the ground as he clutched at his wound. Mira, seeing her brother's plight, let out a cry of rage and desperation. She charged forward, her blade held high, ready to strike at the serpent with all her might. But the beast was ready for her, its tail whipping around and catching her in the side, sending her crashing to the ground. Ariv, his vision blurred by pain and tears, watched as his sister lay motionless on the blood-soaked earth. A rage, unlike anything he had ever known, welled up inside him, a fury born of love and the desperate need to protect what was most precious to him. With a roar that echoed through the night, he picked up his fallen weapon and charged at the serpent, his eyes blazing with a fire that seemed to burn from within. And in that moment, as he raised his blade to strike, he knew that he would either emerge victorious or die trying, for there was no other choice, no other path forward. The clash between Ariv and the serpent was one of legend, a battle that would be spoken of for generations to come. The young boy, fueled by a love and rage that knew no bounds, fought with a skill and ferocity that belied his years. His blade flashed in the moonlight, a silver blur that struck at the serpent with unerring precision. But the serpent was a formidable foe, its strength and speed unmatched by any creature in the forest. It struck at Ariv with a venomous fury, its fangs bared, its eyes glinting with malice. Ariv, his body battered and bleeding, refused to yield. He thought of Mira, of the life they had shared, of the love that had sustained them through the darkest of times. He thought of the village, of the people who had placed their trust in him, who had looked to him for hope and guidance. With a final, desperate cry, he lunged forward, his blade aimed at the serpent's heart. The beast, caught off guard by the boy's sudden burst of speed, had no time to react. Ariv's weapon found its mark, plunging deep into the serpent's chest, piercing its black heart. The serpent let out a shriek of agony, its body convulsing as the life drained from its eyes. It thrashed and writhed, its tail lashing out in a final, futile attempt to strike at its attacker. But Ariv held fast, his grip on his weapon unwavering, his gaze locked on the beast's dying form. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The serpent, the terror that had haunted the village for so long, lay dead at Ariv's feet, its body still and lifeless. The young boy, his strength spent, collapsed to the ground, his eyes fluttering closed as unconsciousness claimed him. In the aftermath of the battle, the village was a flurry of activity. The wounded were tended to, their injuries treated with the utmost care and compassion. The dead, those brave souls who had given their lives in defense of their home, were honored with solemn ceremonies and heartfelt tributes. Mira, who had been badly injured in the fight, lay in a makeshift infirmary, her body racked with pain and fever. Amara, the healer, worked tirelessly to mend her wounds, her gentle hands and soothing words a balm to the young girl's battered soul. Ariv, who had been hailed as a hero by the villagers, refused to leave his sister's side. He sat by her bedside day and night, his hand clasped tightly in hers, his eyes never leaving her face. He whispered words of encouragement and love, his voice a lifeline that tethered Mira to the world of the living. As the days passed, Mira's condition began to improve. Her fever broke, her wounds began to heal, and color returned to her pale cheeks. And with each passing day, the village began to rebuild, to heal, to find a new sense of purpose and unity. Rishi, the wise elder, took on the role of leader, his calm and steady presence a guiding light for the villagers. Kiran, the warrior, took charge of training the village's defenders, his skills and knowledge an invaluable resource. And Amara, the healer, continued to tend to the sick and injured, her compassion and dedication an inspiration to all. But even as the village began to thrive, a new threat loomed on the horizon. For the serpent, though dead, had left behind a legacy of fear and darkness, a shadow that would not be easily dispelled. As the weeks turned to months, the village began to prosper. The fields, once barren and lifeless, now bloomed with crops and vegetation. The homes, once dilapidated and crumbling, were rebuilt and fortified, their walls strong and sturdy. But even as the village flourished, a sense of unease lingered in the air. Rumors began to circulate of strange sightings in the forest, of shadowy figures lurking in the darkness, of whispers and hisses that echoed through the night. Ariv, now fully recovered from his injuries, took it upon himself to investigate these rumors. He ventured into the forest, his senses on high alert, his weapon at the ready. And what he found there chilled him to the bone. Deep in the heart of the forest, in a clearing that had once been the serpent's lair, he discovered a nest of eggs, their shells glistening in the dappled sunlight. And from those eggs, he heard the faint but unmistakable sound of life, of tiny heartbeats pulsing in the silence. Ariv knew then that the serpent's legacy lived on, that its offspring would one day emerge to terrorize the village once more. He returned to the village with a heavy heart, his mind racing with the implications of his discovery. The villagers, upon hearing the news, were gripped by a new wave of fear and despair. They had fought so hard, had sacrificed so much, only to be faced with the prospect of another battle, another war. But Ariv, his spirit unbroken, his resolve unwavering, refused to let fear take hold. He gathered the villagers together, his voice ringing out with clarity and conviction. He spoke of the battles they had won, of the strength and courage that lived within each and every one of them. He spoke of a future free from fear, of a village that would stand tall and proud, a beacon of hope and resilience. And as he spoke, the the villagers began to nod, their eyes sparking with a newfound determination. They knew that the road ahead would be long and hard, that there would be challenges and obstacles to overcome. But they also knew that they had each other, that they were stronger together than they ever could be alone. In the days that followed, the village began to prepare for the coming battle. Weapons were forged, defenses were fortified, and plans were made. Arav, Mira, Rishi, Amara, and Kiran worked tirelessly to train the villagers, to teach them the skills they would need to survive. But even as they prepared, a new challenge arose. For the serpent's offspring, now hatched and growing, had begun to venture out into the forest, their hunger and bloodlust driving them to seek out prey. The first attack came without warning, a pack of young serpents descending upon a group of villagers who had ventured too far from the safety of the village. The battle was fierce and bloody, the serpent's venom and speed proving a formidable match for the villagers' strength and skill. But the villagers, armed with the knowledge and training they had received, fought back with a ferocity that caught the serpents off guard. They worked together, their movements synchronized, their attacks precise and deadly. In the end, the villagers emerged victorious, the serpents' bodies littering the forest floor. But the cost had been high, with several villagers falling to the serpent's venom and fangs. Arav, his heart heavy with the weight of the losses, knew that this was only the beginning. The serpents would grow stronger, their numbers would increase, and the battles would become more frequent and more deadly. But he also knew that the village had something that the serpents could never match: a sense of unity, of purpose, of love. They were a community, a family, bound together by the ties of shared struggle and shared triumph. And as he looked out over the village, at the faces of the people he had grown to love and respect, he knew that they would face whatever challenges lay ahead with courage and determination, with the strength that could only come from standing together. As the battles with the serpents continued, Arav began to notice a change in the creatures' behavior. They seemed more coordinated, more strategic, as if they were being guided by some unseen force. He shared his concerns with Rishi, Amara, and Kiran, and together they began to investigate. They delved deeper into the forest, following the serpent's tracks and movements, searching for clues that might explain their newfound cunning. What they discovered was a revelation that shook them to their core. For deep within the serpent's lair, they found evidence of an intelligence far greater than any mere beast. They found carvings and symbols, ancient and arcane, that spoke of a dark and twisted power. Rishi, his eyes wide with horror and understanding, realized the truth. The serpent, the one they had killed, had not been a mere creature, but a vessel, a conduit for an ancient and malevolent spirit. And now that spirit, freed from its physical form, had taken root in the hearts and minds of its offspring. Arav, his heart heavy with the weight of this knowledge, knew that they faced a threat far greater than any they had ever known. They were no longer fighting against mere beasts, but against an evil that had festered for centuries, an evil that sought to corrupt and destroy all that was good and pure. But even in the face of this revelation, Arav refused to despair. He gathered the villagers once more, his voice ringing out with a newfound urgency and conviction. He spoke of the true nature of the threat they faced, of the dark power that sought to consume them all. And he spoke of the power that lived within each and every one of them, the power of love, of unity, of hope. He reminded them of all they had overcome, of the battles they had won, of the strength and resilience that had carried them through the darkest of times. The villagers, their hearts stirred by Arav's words, rallied around him once more. They knew that the road ahead would be long and hard, that the battles would be fierce and bloody, but they also knew that they had each other, that they were stronger together than they ever could be alone. As the village prepared for the final battle, Arav and Mira found themselves at the center of a maelstrom of activity. They worked tirelessly alongside Rishi, Amara, and Kiran, training the villagers, fortifying the defenses, and seeking out any weakness in the serpent's newfound power. But even as they worked, a sense of unease lingered in the air. For the serpents, now guided by the malevolent spirit that possessed them, had grown bolder and more aggressive with each passing day. The attacks became more frequent, more brutal, the serpents striking at the village with a ferocity that bordered on madness. The villagers fought back with all their strength and skill, but the toll was heavy, with more and more falling to the serpent's venom and fangs. Ariv, his heart heavy with the weight of the losses, knew that they could not go on like this forever. They needed a plan, a way to strike at the heart of the serpent's power, to break the hold that the dark spirit had over them. And so, in the quiet moments between battles, he and his allies began to plot and scheme. They pored over ancient texts and scrolls, seeking out any knowledge that might aid them in their fight. They consulted with the village elders, with the healers and the warriors, with anyone who might have insight into the nature of the enemy they faced. And slowly, piece by piece, a plan began to take shape. It was a plan born of desperation and hope, a plan that would require all their strength and courage, all their love and unity. For at the heart of the plan was a sacrifice, a willingness to lay down one's life for the sake of others. Ariv, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what he must do, knew that he was the only one who could carry out this final, desperate act. But even as he prepared himself for the end, he found himself thinking of Mira, of the life they had shared, of the love that had sustained them through the darkest of times. He knew that he could not leave her alone, that he could not abandon her to face the darkness on her own. And so, with a heavy heart and a determined spirit, he made his decision. He would face the serpents, would strike at the heart of their power, but he would not do it alone. He would stand alongside his sister, his friends, his village, and together they would face whatever fate had in store for them. The final battle began at dawn, the serpents descending upon the village like a plague, their eyes glinting with malice and hunger. Ariv, Mira, and their allies stood at the forefront of the defense, their weapons at the ready, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. The battle was fierce and bloody, the serpents striking with a speed and ferocity that seemed almost supernatural. The villagers fought back with all their strength and skill, but the toll was heavy, with more and more falling to the serpent's venom and fangs. Ariv, his heart heavy with the weight of the losses, knew that the time had come for him to act. He turned to Mira, his eyes shining with love and sorrow, and pulled her into a tight embrace. "I must go," he whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. "I must face the serpents, must strike at the heart of their power. But I cannot do it alone. I need you by my side, sister. I need your strength, your courage, your love." Mira, her eyes brimming with tears, nodded, her heart swelling with a love and pride that knew no bounds. Together, hand in hand, they turned to face the serpents, their weapons held high, their spirits unbroken. And as they charged forward, the villagers rallying around them, Ariv felt a sense of peace wash over him. He knew that whatever happened, whatever fate had in store for them, they would face it together, as a family, as a community, as one. The battle raged on, the serpents and the villagers locked in a deadly dance of steel and venom. Ariv and Mira fought side by side, their movements synchronized, their hearts beating as one. They struck at the serpents with a speed and precision that seemed almost inhuman, their blades finding purchase in the creature's tough hide. But even as they fought, Ariv could feel the dark spirit's power growing, could feel its malevolent presence pressing in on them from all sides. He knew that they were running out of time, that they needed to strike at the heart of the serpent's power before it was too late. And so, with a final, desperate cry, he lunged forward, his blade aimed at the largest and most powerful of the serpents. The creature, caught off guard by Ariv's sudden burst of speed, had no time to react. Ariv's weapon found its mark, plunging deep into the serpent's chest, piercing its black heart. The serpent let out a shriek of agony, its body convulsing as the life drained from its eyes. And in that moment, Ariv felt a surge of power unlike anything he had ever known, a force that seemed to flow from the serpent's dying form and into his own body. He knew then that he had been chosen, that the spirit that had once possessed the serpents had now taken root in his own heart and mind. He could feel its dark power coursing through his veins, could feel its malevolent presence lurking at the edges of his consciousness. But even as he struggled against the weight of this newfound burden, he knew that he was not alone. For Mira was by his side, her love and strength a beacon of hope in the darkness. And all around them, the villagers stood tall and proud, their hearts filled with the courage and resilience that had carried them through the darkest of times. In the aftermath of the battle, the village was a place of both sorrow and celebration. They mourned the fallen, those brave souls who had given their lives in defense of their home and their loved ones. But they also rejoiced in their victory, in the knowledge that they had faced the darkness and emerged stronger and more united than ever before. Ariv, his heart heavy with the weight of his newfound power, knew that his journey was far from over. He could feel the dark spirit's presence within him, could feel its insidious whispers and temptations. But he also knew that he was not alone, that he had the love and support of his sister, his friends, his village. In the days and weeks that followed, Ariv worked tirelessly to master his new abilities, to use them for the good of the village and the world beyond. He became a symbol of hope and resilience, a beacon of light in the darkness. And as the village began to rebuild and prosper, as new life and new love blossomed in the wake of the battle, Ariv knew that they had all been changed by their experiences. They had faced their deepest fears, had confronted the darkness within themselves and within the world around them. But they had also discovered a strength and a unity that they had never known before, a sense of purpose and connection that transcended the boundaries of time and space. They were no longer just individuals, but part of something greater, something that would endure long after they were gone. And as Ariv looked out over the village, at the faces of the people he had grown to love and cherish, he knew that they had all been transformed by their journey. They had emerged from the darkness stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than they had ever been before. For in the end, their story was not just a tale of battle and sacrifice, but a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, always the possibility of transformation and renewal. And as the sun set over the village, casting its golden light across the land, Ariv knew that their story was far from over. For they had learned that true strength lies not in the absence of fear, but in the courage to face it head-on, to stand together in the face of darkness and emerge stronger and more united than ever before.